The Royal Borough of Ayr can proudly claim it is one of Scotland's finest towns. Ayr commands a splendid position on the west coast of Scotland at the mouth of the River Ayr. It enjoys a fantastic situation bounded by beautiful rolling countryside and boasting some of the finest coastal scenery you can find anywhere. The town itself has a fine genteel air about it. In short, it's a very nice place to be. It's therefore hardly surprising to find that over the years it has become so popular with residents and visitors alike. Although outwardly not so steeped in Scottish history as some of the other towns, it has, if you look into its past, some interesting features. The Common Seal of the Borough of Ayr records the town's establishment by royal charter as a borough at the start of the 13th century. The Castle of Ayr had been built a few years previously, and it was around the castle that the town was formed. There is some doubt as to where the castle actually was. Some say it sat roughly in this position near the present Montgomery Terrace, close to the River Ayr, and others say it was more likely to have been situated at Castle Hill, further inland. It has to be said that this option may be more likely, as the castle would have then commanded splendid views of the town below. The castle, a timber building, was abandoned in the 16th century, and no trace of it remains today. From early days, with its natural harbour at the mouth of the River Ayr, the town became an important trading port, and by the 16th century it was exporting cargoes of wool, hides, cloth, salted fish and coal to France, the Netherlands and Scandinavia. By 1750 it was also importing tobacco from America. Historically, the town was fairly peaceful, although in 1651 Cromwell's army swept into Scotland and erected a citadel, or fort, by the banks of the river, where a force of 500 men were garrisoned. Parts of the citadel wall are still easy to see in the town, and if you venture down Citadel Lane, you can see the top part of the main gate into the citadel. All around the area are constant reminders of this part of the borough's history. Over the years, Ayr was free to develop into a prosperous town. Farming and the textile industry contributed to the growth of prosperity. Coal mining, though, was by far the most important, employing thousands across the county until drastic closures were forced upon it. Today, redundant pit winding gear remains like a gravestone to an industry that has almost vanished. One of the most significant developments that affected Ayr was the coming of the railway age. In 1840, the Glasgow, Paisley, Kilmarnock and Ayr Railway Company opened the Glasgow to Ayr railway line. The original passenger station was opened at a site on the North Harbour, where today a block of flats stands. Later, in 1857, the station was transferred to Town Head, where it remains today. Over the years, the railway service improved. Trains to Ayr leaving from the old St Enoch's station in Glasgow became packed with holidaymakers during the summer months. The town was one of the busiest holiday resorts in Scotland. The borough was originally self-governing, with its own town council, which met latterly in the fine town buildings in Newbridge Street, which were opened in 1830 and built to a design by Thomas Hamilton. Ayr was also the county town, where Ayr County Council looked after the affairs of the landward areas. This led to the establishment of the county buildings in Wellington Square, which were constructed between 1818 and 1822 and housed the administrative buildings and the Sheriff Court. In 1931, the Duke of York, who was later to become King George VI, laid the foundation stone for a further extension which opened in 1935. The entire complex now housed additional council offices as well as the Sheriff Court and the High Court when it met in circuit. In 1975, the Ayr Town Council was abolished under local government reform, and control of the borough's affairs was vested in the joint control of the new Kyle and Carrick District Council and Strathclyde Regional Council. In 1996, control was yet again changed to South Ayrshire Council, who now use the building as well as the Sheriff Court. Ayr quickly became popular as a residential town for those wishing to live in pleasant surroundings and yet be within commuting distance of the Glasgow area. Many attractive areas of housing were built over the years, and today they are still much sought after. Although the local holiday trade has all but disappeared, Ayr today is a busy and thriving town. Its position as the principal county town has led to its importance as a major shopping area. With excellent transport links with the surrounding area, it is becoming increasingly popular as a residential and commercial area. And of course, given fine weather, hordes of visitors still descend on the town to enjoy its attractions. No story of Ayr would be complete without mention of Scotland's national bard, Robert Burns, who was born in Alloway in 1759. Today, Alloway is visited by countless tourists from all over the world who come to see the famous cottage where he was born and to savour the atmosphere of other attractions like the Brigadoon and Kirk Alloway. The development under the Burns National Heritage Park has done a lot to maintain the area as a major tourist attraction and also helped to promote a continued interest in Burns's work. Part of Burns' universal appeal was that he observed life as it was then and painted in words a vivid picture for others to enjoy and reflect upon. How many of us, though, take the time to record a picture of everyday scenes and events? For nothing stays still. Today's news is tomorrow's history. Andrew Shearer, who ran a joiner and builder's business in Newton and Ayr, was one man who saw the importance of this and set about obtaining a unique record of local history. Armed with little other than great enthusiasm, he embarked on the world of photography, as his son Andy explains.
My father was born in 1905, and by the time he was about 20, he became interested in a lot of things. He'd served his time as a joiner, and he was interested in seeing pictures of various photographers, and there was a lot of competitions in these days for photographs and papers and that type of thing. He decided to go himself, but he needed to get a start somewhere. As far as I know, he met up with somebody from the Ayr Photographic Club or Ayr Camera Club, something like that, and he got information how to get started. These days it was all plate cameras, and he had a quarter plate camera, and he learned how to develop and process these things, and he made a lot of them into slides, the film and pictures. Now, later on, he experimented with film and eventually colour, Ferrania colour, just before he died. But the slides that he made were a lot in the history of Ayr, and Ayr as it was from about 1927, 28, right through to he died in 1960. A lot of the slides he hand tinted, and you'll see in some of the pictures they're a sort of nice colour. Again, some of the newer slides that he made were in Ferrania colour. But anyway, he started off now not being able to afford much. He'd been a joiner, made his own equipment as far as he could. Now he made a small dishes with wood, with a good coating of waterproof type paint inside, and that was his developing dishes. He made his own enlarger, which was a projector, which we had a thing on the wall which you pinned the paper to, and then opened the light, and that was his enlarger for if he wanted to make prints. He also made an apparatus for making contact prints. He did all this himself. Now, when he bought his developer and high-poured chemicals and that, he worked it out that there was a formula given for working these things out, but if he diluted the chemicals and gave it a longer exposure, he got the same result. And of course that kind of helped to spin out the money in the chemicals. He did all these sort of things, and say his interest in the life of Ayr, it's been recorded as it was at that time through his photographs.
With this projector, again home built, Andrew Shearer was a popular speaker at various organisations with his slides of Ayr. Since his death in 1960, his slides and photographs have seldom been seen. Carefully stored in these boxes by his family, they have been waiting a new audience. We are privileged to now open them once again and let you step back in time to enjoy scenes and memories of Ayr. The shadowy outlines of the cranes at Ayr Harbour, seen from the Newton shore one day in the 1930s, is the starting point of our journey. The harbour was, of course, the traditional source of Ayer's prosperity as a trading port and the natural choice for a series of photographs. For many years, the principal export from here was coal from the Ayrshire mines, which was brought down to the harbour by rail. From here, the wagons were pulled along the quayside by a system of hawsers to the waiting ships, as these pictures taken in 1931 show. They were then lifted bodily into the air by a crane, suspended over the ship's hold, and the entire contents tipped out. This must have been an extremely noisy and dirty business. Colliers like this then carried the coal away, mainly to Ireland. This was an important part of the local economy. In 1939, for instance, 1.75 million tonnes of coal was exported. Later on, a large coal elevator was built for loading the ships, and here we can see it under construction in 1932. A railway bridge allowed trains access to the South Harbour. This was later discontinued after the shipyard closed in the early 60s and the railway line fell into disuse. In 1978, the bridge was completely removed. Today, its foundations can still be seen in the river. From early days, Ayr was also an important fishing port with its own fish market, and was where the fishing fleet came to unload their catch. This picture, taken in the 1950s, shows the large number of boats that used the port at that time. The fish trade continued until 1996, when the fish market was moved to Troon. The area is now deserted and waiting a new use. However, back in the 1940s, the harbour was still a busy place and was frequented by a young Andy who only lived a short cycle run away. Some well-placed contacts allowed his interest to go further.
About 1948, I started at Ayr Academy in the first year, along with my very good friend Bobby Jimmy, who stayed round the corner from me. Bobby's mother was a cousin of the then harbour master, Captain K. And thanks to that relationship, Bobby and I got into places down the harbour that we really shouldn't have. But suffice to say that we became friendly with the pilots and the berthing masters at the old pilot house, which is a round affair at the junction of the river and the entrance to the dock. And we spent, along with several others, many happy hours down there. And on occasions when boats, like mostly the old coasters, when they were coming in, we sometimes, as a sure-handed, helped them to get the ropes ashore and put them over the bollards for tying up. And we helped quite a bit. We got a chance to scrub out the pilot boat and the sails occasionally on the dredger when it was putting out its muck out in the bay.
The original Ayr dredger, the Kyle, was actually built in Ayr by Samuel McKnight in 1885 and operated until 1949. In 1949, another dredger, the Carrick, was brought to Ayr. It had been built in 1938 by Simons and Company of Renfrew. For a short spell, both dredgers operated, and then the Kyle was withdrawn and the work was continued by the Carrick, which serviced both Ayr and Troon harbours for over 30 years. In this picture we see Jimmy McCrindle, who was the helmsman of the Carrick. The harbour also had its own tug, which it shared with Troon, the paddle tug Walney. It was built in 1904 in Tyneside and operated in the port between the 1930s and the 1960s. There was also a port diver, David Anderson. He was the man responsible for carrying out all manner of underwater repairs and maintenance. There were also regular pleasure sailings from the harbour. The paddle steamer Juno was the airboat in the 1930s. She was built in 1898 at Clydebank. Here we see her entering Ayr Harbour in 1931 on her last cruise before being broken up. A brand new turbine steamer, the Duchess of Hamilton, replaced the Juno as the Ayr boat. After the war, this service was operated by another ship, the Marchioness of Graham.
The Clyde pleasure steamers, the Marchioness of Graham was the steamer which did the excursions from Ayr, and every year Bobby and I had the first week of the summer holidays on the Marchioness of Graham with a run-around ticket. The first year it cost us 10 shillings, the next year it cost us 15 shillings, and then for about 2 other years it was I think £1, which let us go over the Marchioness of Graham up the Clyde, and then we jumped boats from here and there and everywhere and back at Ayr at night.
The large fleet of steamers that operated in the Clyde in those days required regular maintenance, and many of these ships came to Ayr for their winter overhaul. During the 1950s, the Queen Mary II, the Duchess of Hamilton, Duchess of Argyll, and the Glen Sannocks were all frequent visitors. At the far end of the South Harbour was a swing bridge over the entrance to the shipyard and slip. After the shipyard closed, the bridge was removed. Look carefully at the sandstone pier in the middle. It's still there today, but the scene is quite different. Part of the slip, with a rather forlorn old fishing boat sitting on it, is all that is left today of the shipyard, which was started on this side of the river in 1883 by McKnight and Macready. In 1884, Macready left the business, which then carried on as Samuel McKnight and Company. Several vessels were built by this company, including Clyde paddle steamers like the Madge Wildfire and Lady Rowena. The yard was taken over in 1902 by the Ailsa Shipbuilding Company, who built over 140 vessels. 1933 saw the last ship to be built at Ayr, after which the yard closed down before being reopened in the war years for Admiralty repair work. In 1947, the Ayr Engineering and Construction Company took over the yard and continued to do repair work. In this picture, taken in the early 50s, you can see one of the Clyde steamers hauled up onto the slipway for repairs. The shipyard closed in 1963, and in 1971 the site was sold to Ayr Town Council. Commercial activity still remains in the North Harbour, where Associated British Ports offers considerable experience in handling a wide range of cargoes. The South Harbour area has now been converted into a residential area, with several blocks of flats having recently been built. This is the scene on a summer's day in 2003, looking towards the end of the harbour area. Let's turn the clock back 70 years to see what it was like then. In the background of this picture is the old bathing station, which had basic changing accommodation. This was a popular spot for a dip in pre-war days, and as you can see, a fair number of people are in the water. In this hand-tinted photograph, 3 bathers display their gymnastic abilities on the steps of the bathing station. Today, if you look carefully, you can still see the concrete base of the bathing station and the steps down to the beach, although it is increasingly difficult to spot many bathers. However, given fine weather, there are still some hardy souls willing to enjoy a bathe. No matter what the weather, Ayr Beach, in all its moods, is still a captivating spot. Locals and visitors love this area with its prom, bracing air and wonderful views. It would be fair to say that this appeal has belonged to generations of families who have very fond memories of Ayr Beach. Back in the 1930s, when holidays at home were the norm, Andrew Shearer was able to capture the happy atmosphere. Close to the beach is St John's Tower, the only visible remains of the original parish church of Ayr, which can trace its roots back to the 13th century. The church is thought to have been demolished sometime after 1693. In the early 14th century, the Scottish Parliament met in St John's Church and proclaimed Robert the Bruce King of Scotland. Later, in the 17th century, Oliver Cromwell, who had established his garrison in the town, commandeered the church for a watchtower and storehouse. At one time, the tower was still open to the public, where they could enjoy the marvellous views of the town from the top of the gallery. One local story is that in 1263 it was from this tower that King Haakon's Viking invasion fleet was spotted and advanced warning given to the Scottish army, resulting in their famous victory at the Battle of Largs. Today it is no longer possible to go up the tower, and although a notice welcomes you to wander through the grounds, the gates remain firmly locked. Situated by the banks of the river is Ayr's other historic church, the Auld Kirk. Due to the fact that in Cromwell's time St John's Church had been requisitioned for his army, the people of Ayr were consequently deprived of their place of worship. Cromwell, however, agreed to fund part of the cost of a new church, and so the Auld Kirk, as we know it today, came to be built in 1654. Almost 350 years later, the church still plays a large part in the religious life of the town. Close to the church is the Old Brig. It is thought to have been built around the middle of the 15th century. In 1904, the bridge was declared unsafe due to severe erosion of its foundations. Sir William Arrol, who was a distinguished bridge builder of the time, was consulted. He declared the bridge unsafe and said it should be demolished. Mr. Hall Blythe, a consultant engineer, was then consulted. He agreed preservation was impossible and proposed that the bridge be rebuilt. A further engineer, a Mr. Crothers, however, felt preservation was possible. After much debate, a public appeal for funds for preservation was launched, and by 1907 the target of £10,000 was achieved. Work was then commenced under the supervision of a Mr. W.S. Wilson, who had considerable experience of the type of work required. Thanks to his skill and the determination of those who fought to retain the bridge, you can still use the Old Brig to this day. The main river crossing today is by the new bridge built in 1878. Years ago, the scene was pretty similar. But if you roll the picture back 100 years, there was a different bridge at the site, the first new bridge of Ayr, which was built in 1788.